This series is presented by the National Dropout Prevention Center, a division of SPN, the Successful Practices Network. The pandemic's impact on at-risk students, schools, and learning was presented live to the South Carolina Department of Education by Dr. Sandy Addis, the chairman of the National Dropout Prevention Center, on his recent publication co-authored by Ray McNulty with an introduction from Dr. Bill Daggett.
Student supports were curtailed. You know, the last few years, we in South Carolina schools, most of our districts have done a very good job of building a network of student supports around our at-risk students. We figured out that kids needed things to be able to succeed in school that they weren't, you know, maybe it's not our primary role to provide, but they weren't going to succeed without them. Everything from vision checks to audiology checks to dental services to clothes closets. There were all kinds of supports that we were able to put in place. And many South Carolina schools had a pretty doggone good system of these other supports, if you will. And many of those things disappeared for these kids that needed them the most. School-based services were unavailable. You know, hearing checks and vision checks, those kind of things, we just couldn't do them. And so those things didn't happen. And there were a lot of kids that needed those things desperately to succeed in school. You know, a lot of us had what we call wraparound services, where we had tiers of support, you know, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supports, where we had mental health services, and you go to the counselor, the social worker, the family caseworker, those kind of people. And we had those wraparound services that were part of the school structure. But yet when we went virtual, when we shut down, those people that ran those services had a very difficult time attempting to provide them remotely or virtually, or even in person if they were able to. It was still tough because we didn't have the kids at the school site. Also, school originated referrals to other agencies were reduced. A lot of the other service agencies in South Carolina reported that their caseloads went down during pandemic shutdown. And that's because we as educators have been the primary referral source to many of these agencies for kids. We would notice things that a kid needed, a family needed, we would pass it on, make the referral, and the service would occur. And so we were not able to see those needs. We were not able to make the referrals. And so those things just didn't happen. And then the educator identification of problems and issues was limited. Think about how ongoing over the course of any school year, we as educators, we look for signals and signs that a child might need referral for special education. They might need referral for some other service, a special service that we have in the school system. And we didn't have the kids, so we couldn't see the problems and we couldn't make the referrals. And so many kids, we probably have a year's backlog of special ed referrals in some cases because we couldn't have the kid on site and make the referral, and we didn't have the capacity to do it. So student supports were severely curtailed, and we got many kids that depend on these for success in school. Then we curtailed a lot of other important things. Here was a headline. It was outside of South Carolina. Bayfield School District cancels the rest of the football season. That was a common thread for school districts across South Carolina. And a lot of districts are still struggling, particularly as we reopen now and as we see a resurgence of COVID cases in the state. Many schools are struggling. Well, do we do sports? If we do sports, which ones do we do? How do we do them? How do we do them safely? So we know that school engagement factors were limited. Now, school engagement is a interesting topic because engaging with school is what causes students to be successful. They feel good at school, they feel accepted, they feel like they have a place there. It's where they want to be every day, and they enjoy both the interaction with the adults, with the other students, and they enjoy their instruction. And so we've done a lot of things over the course of our years in education to build engagement because we know that engaged kids learn. Sports and extracurricular activities were curtailed, as we already mentioned. Some districts just totally cancel sports in some cases when they did start back up. And many South Carolina districts did start back face-to-face in the 2021 school year for many students. But many of us started without sports, without extracurriculars, without many of the other programs. And these were some of the things that the kids depended on to be engaged in school. Interpersonal connections of educators with at-risk students were more difficult. This is something we can't ignore. Most of us as educators, and I guarantee everybody on this meeting has done this from time to time, whether we did it consciously or unconsciously. As an educator, we spotted kids that needed a relationship and a connection with us. We spotted a kid or a group of kids that we felt like they were just not quite with it, and not quite with us instructionally or behaviorally. So what many of us did unconsciously as educators over the years, we connected with those kids. We asked them questions. We met them at the door. We tried to learn a little something special about their life so we could ask them about their weekend or about their part-time job or something. And so we created those interpersonal connections because we know that when kids have interpersonal connections with educators, they will learn better. They will behave better for those educators, and they will learn at a higher level. And so when we went into shutdown and when we went virtual, the connections were almost non-existent. Now, many teachers tried. They sent notes. They had office hours, if you will, where they were available on the computer. They would have individual conferences with kids, but it's just not the same. And so we lost many of those connections that we had worked so hard to build. And those were the things that were making kids successful. Another thing we have to remember is that the social aspects of school disappeared for many kids, for most kids. A lot of kids come to school for the social life, and that's okay as long as they learn. As a matter of fact, many of them learn because they have a social life at school. They come to school to be with their friends, to interact, to network, and they count on that. That's part of what they look forward to. And so those things, again, disappeared. And a lot of kids, actually, what we know from reports from parents and anecdotal situations, we know that a lot of kids actually went from being very well-adjusted teenagers or young people to becoming isolated, to withdrawing, to showing personality changes. And so that happened to a lot of kids. And the most engaging elements of the curriculum, like career tech ed, student clubs, and the arts, were minimized. Think about this. Let's say that I'm a high school junior and I come to school because I love auto mechanics. I love to go in that shop. That's my thing. And I'll put up with algebra and 11th grade English and a few other things in order to get to go to my auto mechanics class over to Career Center and learn to work on automobiles. And so now my instruction that I was so attached to went virtual. And so now I'm reading books about fixing cars or something rather than actually going into the shop and doing it. And so those things happen. A lot of districts curtail the arts. They said, well, you know, we've got to offer virtual instruction in the basics, but we can't offer virtual instruction in violin. So we may just have to eliminate that. And so a lot of kids lost some of the very things that they were so engaged with school about.